and what the American people deserve from us at this uncertain time in their lives.
The one thing I think we can agree on is we shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute, and you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it.
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very quickly. And
20 times.
I don't want to do what you did.
20 times
Chuck,
you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool. None of us have said.
You want to know something?
You've said
it. Okay, you want to put that on my...
You've said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border security.
But we believe you shouldn't shut it down.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Headline series. I'm your host Jay, and this is the Objective Podcast. It has been a while, friends, but I'm happy that you can be here to join me. Podcasting, making videos, stuff like this, it truly is a hobby of mine, and I'm really privileged. I'm really happy to be able to do that. Having a career, family, it does make it difficult to consistently give you guys content. So I do appreciate you guys being here today and affording me the privilege to even speak here and that you could even listen. So thinking about this podcast and what a privilege it is to actually inject my opinion into the discourse that's happening today. It truly is a privilege. It truly is a privilege. I mean, in a world where, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, those things seem so under attack. I think we should really appreciate and hold and cherish opportunities like this to, state our opinions, state our views, whether they be mainstream or not. I think it's really important that we're able to do that. So much has happened. The last article that I wrote on politicalstorm.com, be sure to visit politicalstorm.com to check out some of my content. My podcast, it's been a while since I've done one, but I have been writing some articles. So the last one that I wrote actually was a little while ago. It was on the midterms. And it was my prediction that the Republicans would keep the House and the Senate. I was wrong because the Republicans did lose the House to the Democrats. But they did gain seats in the Senate. So, I think as much as, you want your party to have all the power, it's healthy in a democracy that the power is divided and that there's a balance and checks and balances. So I think, you have to find some sort of joy and happiness in that balance of power, because that is the essence of a democracy. Speaking about, podcasting and, freedom of speech and whatnot, it made me realize, and made me really ponder the fact that, living in North America, I live in Canada, living in North America, and to my fellow Americans that are watching this right now, it truly is a privilege. And when you say that America, for instance, is the best country in the world, despite the fact that, there is violence, there is poverty, there are a lot of issues that can be identified about America, America's culture, America's history. There's so much. We can write books, and there have been books written on the core characteristics of America. And you know what? And that can be said for any country. But then you have to wonder to yourself, what is it about America? What is it about the West that's so appealing to immigrants, to refugees? What is it about America that makes it the hub Why don't people, immigrate to Mexico? Why don't people immigrate to Africa or Asia and stuff? Like, why is it America? And what I believe is that the reason why America and the West, more generally speaking, is so attractive to people coming in, despite the critiques that you have from people on the other side of the spectrum, despite the critiques, people that live in the West that have their critiques about why the West is so racist and why the West is so bad and why the living conditions are so horrible. Despite all that, like I said, you have people who are rushing the border. You have people who are, trying to circumvent the immigration laws in the West to be a part of what they call and what we generally know as the American dream. And the reason why I think that is, guys, is because the founders of this country, having experienced the tyrannical aspect of government, having experienced power abused, the Constitution was written with a spirit of distrust for government. And the liberties, I have this right here. This was a gift from my brother-in-law's family, who live out in the States. The Constitution, it grants American citizens liberties, God-given rights, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, freedom of the press. These are things that you don't see in a lot of different countries. And I think that needs to be, as bad as people say it is, people were saying that Trump is against the free press and Trump is trying to make a state media and Trump is calls the press the enemy of the people. And they make it seem like it's so tyrannical and authoritarian when really people who actually lived, in the past in under tyrannical governments, they would be laughing at the lavish and the luxurious lifestyle that we are so fortunate to have out here in the West. These countries, these people like in Mexico and whatnot, in the Middle East, you hear so often that people who have whole different beliefs are murdered. Christians, Coptic Christians, are killed by vast amounts, in these countries. The press, you have reporters and journalists who are murdered, in these different countries. America and the West, it's a great place. It's the greatest place on the earth, on the planet. And the reason that is because of the foundations that these civilizations in these countries are built on, right? It's the freedoms, it's the liberties that people have. And yes, like I said, folks, there's so much wrong. Gun violence, you have murders. Look at Chicago. There is violence, and there are things that can be said about the negative aspects and people taking advantage of the liberties that we have, and the justice system that actually promotes due process. I was going to read an article, and it was going to be talking about corruption happening in the blind spots of due process. Due process is a beautiful thing, but there are people who take advantage of the amicable nature of due process, if that makes any sense. And that's just human nature, folks. And that's we kind of have to realize that. I say all that to say this. The whole immigration conundrum happening right now in the United States with the caravan and illegal immigration, President Trump asking for his wall. Just yesterday, actually, I saw President Trump and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They had an open, they had the media in the White House, and they were recording their dialogue. And it was pretty much about the shutdown of the government if President Trump didn't get his wall. Now, one thing that we realize is that President Trump is, if anything, he is a stimulus to... Now, okay, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here. America has always been divided. That's just the fact of the matter. But I don't think it would be unrealistic to say that President Trump he is in some way accentuated that division. Like, people are very tribal now. And I think that President Trump has something to do with that. The Democrats don't want to give him his wall. They don't want to give him funding. They say no wall. Now, it's interesting because if you look back at previous Democrat positions, they want a fence. They wanted Hillary Clinton, Obama. They talk about enforcing the border. They talk about building a fence. And what's the purpose of a fence? Like, why is it okay to have a fence and not a wall? If the argument on their side is purely a financial and monetary argument, saying it's a waste of money, that's an argument. But if it's because they say, and they have said, that a wall is immoral, and a wall, it's morally obtuse, that doesn't make any sense, because you wanted a fence. A fence is a barrier. It's just not as it doesn't work as well as a wall. So there's a lot of misplaced righteousness on the side of the left here. But President Trump wants that wall. And I always think, like, let's politics aside, folks, it doesn't make any sense to have open borders. That is absurd. That is ridiculous. That is foolish. That is dangerous. And I always remember, I believe his name was Raj. He's in the Trump administration. Pardon my lack of memory here, but he said that breaking the law does not breed safety. In lack of, that's not verbatim, but he says basically, by having people come through the borders illegally, how do you expect that to breed safety? You need to have checks and balances, like we spoke about earlier in the show. Think about your home. Think about your home without the doors on it, and anyone's welcome to come in. Now, I think when we take politics aside, we take the animosity for Trump and put it aside, and we look at just the common sense of the issue. A country is not a country without borders. You need borders. You need to control who's coming in. It's government's job to protect its citizens. And if you are letting people come in, just unchecked and unfettered freedom and access, how are you promoting safety of your citizens? Now, this shouldn't even be a dividing issue. But as you can see, the left is so against everything that President Trump is for, that even when President Trump is saying things that are common sense, these people will fight against it. And it's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. And, people are starting to wake up and see, what, are these folks actually fighting for our best interests, or is this just to get back at Trump, to obstruct his agenda? So, you know what, like, yes, we do have a duty as citizens to help those who are in need, but that shouldn't mean putting security and safety on the altar, on the sacrificial altar of magnanimity, if that's the word I'm looking for, or being overly generous or overly charitable. And I think that needs to be determined. That needs to be established. That yes, once we secure the wall so that people can't just go through and walk through or crawl under the walls, or the poor level of barriers that stand today in the States on the southern border, there needs to be something done on that front, whether it be a physical barrier, bolstering, personnel, security personnel that's down there, whatever the case may be. That needs to be established. That is something that Democrats and Republicans have agreed on for a long time, right? And it's only since President Trump has made it his promise and he's been coming through on his other promises, they don't want to look like idiots for, they don't want to eat crow, really, for all the critical talking points that they had on him, and how ridiculous they made his presidency seem before he was in office. So there's much to be said about a merit-based immigration system, which President Trump does favor. Canada has a merit-based system where people, the best and the brightest, are brought from these countries. That helps your country, right? It's not your job as a country to help. It's not your primary job to help other countries before your own citizens. You were placed into office to serve your people and to protect your people. That is something we need to agree on. And then obviously we do have refugee programs because there are people in different parts of the world who are suffering at the hand of tyrannical and oppressive powers. So that's another conversation, and we shouldn't blur them together. So that's pretty much, I don't want to take too much of your time, guys, but I do appreciate you guys stopping by, checking out this video. If you do agree, tell me about it in the comments. If you don't agree, also tell me about it in the comments. Follow me on Instagram at The Objective Podcast. We can talk there. You can DM me. You can talk to me here. Whatever works best for you. But definitely on Instagram, give me a follow at The Objective Podcast, and check out www.politicalstorm.com. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in today's episode. Make sure that we make it our objective to be objective. Have a good night.